Here is the lead, and then I'll give you the headline. A large trucking company owes money to job seekers in Washington State for wasting their time. It failed to include a wage scale and job post. This is the second mega carrier to settle a pay transparency lawsuit in the state. And the headline, of course, is, as Dave pointed out at the beginning of the show, another trucking giant owes applicants for vague job pay info. Another trucking giant owes applicants for vague job pay info. Social media, which is one of the ways that we are benefiting in our new platform. I mean, the idea of, in the old days, if you lost a slot or changed a slot, you had to find a slot. Mm-hmm. That was it, right? That was the ball game, is you found a new place to cut a broadcast or you were done. Nowadays, it's like, well, I'm going to go make my own miracle happen. I think that one of the great benefits, and there's a lot of drawbacks as well, a lot of brutal drawbacks of this newfangled technology in this new era in regards to the interwebs and all that stuff. But one of the great benefits is, man, you screw with people, they can screw back real quick. The mob can come for you. And I think that the transparency issue is going to become more and more of an issue in trucking because truckers can talk to one another. It used to be like, you could always shuffle off down the road to a new state, a new place.
Yeah.
Go ahead, go.
Okay, well, here's this. And I've said this before. Okay, Rush Limbaugh, okay, big audience and everything. How many stations was Rush on? I don't know, 300 and something stations, right? Because they're all small stations here and there and everywhere. So if you're in Kansas, you're listening to one station. If you're in Nebraska, you listen to another. In Mississippi, blah, blah, blah. The Road Gang on AM radio late at night began social media interaction and media, broadcast media. The guys back in the day were doing the same thing that the guys on YouTube are doing right now, except that they weren't able to communicate with us, but they communicated with one another, not with a keyboard, but with a mic button on the CB. We had the only audience that talked to one another in real time during the show. And that made a huge amount of difference in terms of getting the word out about the show. Hey, I'm listening to the Road Gang with Charlie Douglas. Well, what's that? Well, just tune into 870 AM on your radio and you'll hear it. And one guy will tell that to somebody, and then he'll tell somebody else. Then he comes home and he says, oh, listen to what I heard last night from Nemo on the Road Gang or from Charlie. And then the family starts listening.
And then it gets really interesting. All of those folks suddenly know that Tyson Fisher is out there listening. He's the associate editor at Landline. And then he picks it up and then goes back to those guys and says, hey, man, what's going on? Tell me a story so I can get to the bottom of it. Tyson Fisher joins us right now. Good morning to you, sir.
Wow.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good morning. How you guys doing?
We're
fantastic.
We're fine. We actually we bumped you. You came racing in like the good cavalry that you are. It's good to have you on board, brother. By the way, we never got a chance to say it, but congratulations on the promotion to associate editor of Landline Media. It's great to have you back. And we were actually, before you came on, unpacking the story about the night transportation story. And we had a question for you. Do you think this transparency issue is going to become a bigger and bigger issue because of the rapid growth of social media? That truckers are talking, man. Everybody's talking to everybody really, really quickly, which means if you're out there and you're doing something that isn't kind of floating right, they're going to get you and they're going to spread the word on you. Is that kind of your take on stuff? And also unpack the story, too, because you wrote the damn thing.
I think we can all agree that social media kind of has expedited a lot of issues across all industries, and but yeah, this is one of those things to where I think there's about 14 states that have a pay transparency law, and essentially what that means is that whenever an employer posts a job, whether it's on the internet or wherever it is, they have to post a salary range. And so what we're kind of used to seeing, it's like, especially with the truck driving job, you would see, like night transportation posted, you can get paid $1,300 weekly average pay. Well, what's that based on? Like, what is the new truck driver going to get paid? It's probably not going to be $1,300 a week, but they used to be able to get away with just saying average pay. which is very ambiguous. It can mean a lot of things. And so what the wage transparency law says is that, well, it has to be a range, which means, so in this case, it can be like $45,000 to $60,000 annually. Or in the case for most truck driving jobs, if it's like a per mile, it's going to have to say like 55 cents to 63 cents per mile. You have to give a range, and that range has to be based on what, someone who is just getting into that job that they are about to possibly get hired for, what's the minimum and the maximum that they would get for that. And the idea here is that it prevents companies from kind of misleading what, your actual pay is going to be. And then it also allows the applicants to compare, the pay that similar companies are going to get. So it's more protections for the workers to make sure that, whatever the salary that they are going to get or is being posted is what they're probably actually going to get. So I think it's a great thing for workers, but unfortunately, again, I think only about 14 states have this right now.
14 states have it statewide. There are a couple of states that there are some cities that have it. I did some research after reading your article, Tyson, and I'm sure you did the same research. But yeah, it's much less than half of the states. But I wanted to ask you overall, and I get it. I get it. One of the examples you give, going back to the, how much you can make, you can't say $45,000 a year and up, or up to $29 an hour. What they need to say is anywhere from $45,000 to $60,000. But I want to ask you, do you think that was purposeful in terms of causing a little confusion, or do you think it just became confusing? In other words, is it just more economical when you're doing an ad instead of, reading the fine print? Just say, well, here's the general gist of what we do, and you call us and we'll give you the details.
Creating false hope is what I think.
Creating false hope. But do you think it's purposeful, though? I guess the jury thought it was purposeful.
Oh, sure. And that was definitely the case here. I mean, as far as what they thought, I think it's both. I think there are companies, maybe we can give night transportation the benefit of the doubt here and kind of say, yeah, this is on average what our drivers pay or get paid. Nothing malicious here. This is just what the average is. And so this is kind of some type of representation. It gives you an idea of what you can make.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't think there's anything wrong with that.
Just to get you in the door.
Right, exactly. However, I do think that there are other companies. I'm not saying night transportation is one of them, but I'm sure there are companies in states where there are no pay transparency laws that do take advantage of that lack of a law to kind of, I don't know if misrepresentation is a great word, but to kind of like manipulate the wording to make, the job sound better than what it is as far as the pay is. And so I think it's a mixed bag. I think there are some people who are just trying to give you an idea, and there are some people who are malicious about it.
Yeah, and part of, and you make the point, too, that we're giving a little bit more leeway and benefit of the doubt to those folks over at night than we are to J.B. Hunt, which, of course, had to go $4.2 million as opposed to the $110,000. I mean, basically, this is a slap on the wrist saying, okay, this is done, this is settled, don't do this again. The other thing is, too, this lawsuit and this settlement might not have reaped big benefits for the people who were the plaintiffs, but it also kind of puts Knight on notice, hey, guys, we're watching. I mean, that's the other big takeaway, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. As a matter of fact, so I went back, the lawsuit was based on job posts on an app called Drive Pulse. And so I went back on that app to see, if they kind of changed the wording on their job posts, and they're just not posting on there at all. Same thing with the J.B. Hunt about a year ago. J.B. Hunt got busted for the exact same thing in the exact same state by the same plaintiffs, by the way. And when I wrote that story, as a matter of fact, in the story that I have online right now, I kind of compared and contrast a J.B. Hunt post for a truck driver job in Washington State. I compare that to one in Texas, and you will see there is a difference in the description when it comes to the pay. The Texas job says average yearly gross of $90,000 per driver, whereas the Washington State Post gives you that 68 cents to 72 cents per mile, salary range. You don't get that in the Texas Post. So they are being watchful of this. And then, like I said, in states where they don't have to do it, some are not doing it. But I think the general practice for a lot of companies is that whenever they post a job, especially if it's a job it's kind of unique with an interstate truck driver because it's not anyone can kind of apply for that job. So it's not kind of bound by state lines who can apply for that job necessarily. And so when you post those kind of jobs, I think the general rule from a legal standpoint is follow the strictest laws.
Yeah, and okay, so I'm going to ask a follow-up question here because it's a genuine question as opposed to me knowing. Is part of the argument there saying, look, you got to make sure it's consistent across the board. It is an interstate commerce job. So if you're advertising in one state as one thing and another state as another thing, then a very clever driver in Washington might say, I'm going to go apply down in Texas where the rate's better. And then be able to turn around and say, no, the ad I responded to, I realize I'm being hired in Washington, or vice versa. Like I said, I'm trying to kind of figure this, Tyson. I'm not like saying I know what I'm talking about here. Can you kind of help me on this? Is that one of the problems, too, is that they can play games and say, no, according to this application, it says this. Is that what they're concerned about, people playing games with promises in different platforms and in different areas?
Sure. And I'm not a legal expert on this, so I want to give that caveat right there. But I think part of the law is if the job is being posted, not necessarily in a way that someone in Washington State, for example, could see or access, but I think that job post has to specifically target someone in that state. Now, if it's like a nationwide search for interstate truck driver, that would apply. But if it's for a local driver in Texas, just because you can see that in Washington State doesn't mean that you can then say, well, hey, you didn't follow the law here. It doesn't work like that exactly either.
That clarifies it. That makes a lot of sense. The idea that if the route is local or regional and is specifically targeting a certain area, I get it. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And like I said, it seems like the settlement is more about the clarification of the law than it is a big payoff for the plaintiffs.
Yeah, no, it is. And what's interesting about this is that, like I said, about a year ago, J.B. Hunt got fined like more than $4 million, and now we have this Knight case. Since these cases have been filed, in Washington State at least, the law has been amended to kind of give companies some leeway when it comes to complying with these pay transparency laws. And I think that's kind of fair because when you are a large national, sometimes multinational corporation that's just doing a mass job posting on the internet, it's kind of hard to follow this patchwork of state laws. So what Washington State is doing is saying, hey, if you are an applicant and you see a job posting that doesn't comply with this pay transparency law, you have to let the company know that they're not complying before you can file a lawsuit. And I think the law is you have to let the company know. They have a 5 business day window to correct the job posting, and then after that window, if they don't fix it, okay, you can sue them, but you have to give them the opportunity to correct their mistake. And I think we're starting to see more of that too. So it's kind of it cuts both ways, which is this is good for the workers and the applicants, so they get the information that they actually need. But on the other hand, you kind of have to be fair, to these companies because they couldn't possibly know the law in all 50 states if it's a national or multi-state company.
By the way, our good friend Tom Bray, did you see his comment in there?
I did see his comment.
Which is fantastic. The other famous trucking trick was to the small print saying, quote unquote, up to, and then Tom added, including all bonuses and accessory pay that you don't get. That's another thing that we haven't even unpacked, the idea, Tyson, where they're like going, yeah, if you add in your bonuses, it's kind of like those, I know you're a football fan, so it's like those contracts these guys sign, these 3-year deals, for $15 million, but up to $80 million in incentives, and some of the incentives are insane, so I mean,
right.
you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, well, it's like Chiefs fan, so like Patrick Mahomes, he was known for like a $500 million contract. Well, that's if he wins the Super Bowl every single year and gets the MVP every single year. He can get $500 million. That's not what he's going to get, you know. But yeah, to your point, yeah, you can play that same trick with some of these, job postings. And in Washington State, their way around that a little bit is, in addition to posting what the salary range is, you also have to post what the benefits are. So you can kind of see whether or not those benefits will have any effect on what the salary range is. And so there's a little protection there as well. But no, that's an excellent point, because yeah, you see that. Sports is a great example, but you see it in a lot of places too.
Well, here's another one for you: potential for benefits.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
you know that one. Benefits possible. It's like, I mean, you got to say, yeah. I mean, a lot of things are possible. You want to say benefits probable. A probable cause is a good way to think about it. Tyson, we've only got about a minute left with you here, brother. What are you working on next, and what are you looking for to happen over the course of the next week that really has kind of piqued your interest?
I'm chipping away at the truck parking issue here. There's always news coming up there. One thing I'm interested in is the commercialization of rest areas. I know there's a lot of state DOT, stakeholders that are interested in that could possibly help fix the problem there. So it's kind of a big project that I'm diving into. What could happen this week? Who knows? There's so much going on. But one thing that we're looking for, there are the highway bill is one thing that we're really paying attention to closely here. As a matter of fact, truck drivers have an opportunity to weigh in on that. There's a story up on landline.media right now, so you can kind of check out how you can be involved in that process. And then other than that, just kind of just day to day, seeing what happens and then reporting on it appropriately.
Tyson Fisher, of course, the associate editor of Landline, who is a regular contributor to Nemo Nation, has joined us this morning. We are always thrilled to have him. You can find his byline over at landline.media. By the way, where else can people find you, Tyson, if they want to keep up with the Fisher?
Again, landline.media is the best place. But other than that, you can find me occasionally on social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, @FisherTyson, Blue Sky, if that's the thing you do over there. You can find me in those three places as well.
Thank you, sir. It's always good to hear from you, and thank you for making the time early and also staying late. You're a good man, my brother. Have a great week.
Thank you, Tyson.
Love talking to you guys.